Hello, and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast, episode
Hello!
28. Will you stop interrupting me?
I thought that was...
I felt like a nudge there that I was going to start clapping.
I think you guys have some psychological issue there, just trying to interrupt me all the time.
I don't know. I think it's just the enthusiasm. It's infectious.
Hello!
Alright, Pawel just interrupts everybody apparently. How you doing, lads?
Not bad.
I might just be awesome.
Good to have a wee 1 week hiatus.
It wasn't
Well, it was a
intentional.
flurry of activity, and then we just kind of like, oh, a bit of
Not quite. I went on an unexpected holiday, which is the best kind of holiday.
Aye. Give
so-
yourself a little present every day.
That's it. Aye. I don't know what that means, but
I'm not sure.
yeah, I buggered off up to the Highlands and that.
Right.
Hid on an island, Isle of Skye.
Went off grid.
Slept in a shed. Just the usual things you do when you're on holiday. So
In Scotland.
That's certainly in Scotland.
yeah, in Scotland, aye.
We
good
missed
fun.
you a bit.
Saw some Highland coos.
No, just on like a shortbread tin.
No. It was just a giant picture of some Highland coos.
It's a billboard they've got in case you didn't see any.
That's it.
Like, yeah, you can go and look at that, son.
Beautiful part of the country, though, boys. Beautiful part of the country.
in the Highlands,
It's really nice up there. Yes. Take it family. Take it Wains.
This is getting increasingly Scottish.
They take a mobile.
Aye, take your mobile. You're gone off grid.
So allegedly this is still English.
Right,
you
sorry,
just have to listen closely.
We'll go
You
back
must
to
be used to
speaking.
it by now.
Oh, I'm getting to...
Right, we'll get back to speaking English then. So, this is a podcast about gaming. Video gaming, board
And
gaming,
coos.
RPGs, and Highland coos. So, we're going to start off talking about board games in this episode, I
Yes.
think. Let's just get straight into it.
Straight into some board games.
Straight into it. So, I've been playing a hell of a lot of board games.
You've been at the party games.
I've been at the party. I've been at a party though.
You went to a party and you hit the party games pretty hard.
True. So I went to a party and I played the number one rated board game, party game. Sorry, on Board Game Geek,
Right.
which is Codenames.
Okay.
Okay, so this is by one of my favourite designers actually, Vlada Kvatel,
Ah, of course.
your Czech friend. He
Say
did
it 3 times?
Vlada Kvatel,
Three times.
Vlada Kvatel,
Alright, yeah, just one more.
Vlada Kvatel.
That's brilliant, man.
Is that good pronunciation?
I have no idea.
Do you want me to write it down for you?
No, I think we
And
can.
you can pronounce it in your Eastern European voice. And your most dramatic Eastern European voice. That's right. I'm going to write this down. So,
I suppose I'm not qualified to pronounce
Well,
Czech
exactly.
names.
I think we're
well,
making.
I've heard
you know,
that like I've heard some Polish people tell me that Czech sounds childish.
Yes, to a Polish person, Czech actually sounds really funny.
It's like as we were explaining the other week.
Hungarian
apparently-
and Czech are just, it sounds like a language that, yeah, thank you very much.
It's at the bottom there.
Vlada Kvatil.
Kvatil. All right.
Well, there's an accent in there.
There is an accent in there. I almost didn't put the
good.
accent in.
Are we sure this is Czech?
I think so. I'm pretty sure he's a Czechman. Let's check if he's Czech. See what I did there?
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
he's
Thank you for that.
he's definitely Czech.
okay.
So yeah,
Wasn't
Vlada
bad they had-
Kvatil.
No, there's no kv in it. It's just Kvatil.
All right.
Kvatil.
That classic Eastern European way of doing things with consonants that
This
we're
is the
not physically
sub-podcast
capable
about
of.
languages.
Yeah. Well, we've done a lot of sub-podcasts. It's quite good. We should collect them all together. So, what game are you talking about, Chris?
I'm talking about Codenames, but I was just saying that Mr. Designer, he's
aye.
done a couple of my favourite games. He did Dungeon Lords,
Dungeon Lords, a
which
classic.
is a great one.
Yeah.
It's an excellent game. I've not played it in a while actually. We should play Dungeon Lords.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And we
What's
should
his
talk
other?
about it. He also did Space Alert.
That's yeah.
He also did Through the Ages.
Try to remember it was something that just didn't really fit with like Dungeon
Oh
Lords.
yeah, I mean,
He just does everything.
We're talking about, like, he did Dungeon Lords, which
Yep.
is like it's basically like Dungeon Keeper, the video game in board game form.
It's a nicely designed game. Pretty
yep.
frustrating to play.
Very
with,
frustrating.
But
There's a very puzzly element to it as well. He also did Space Alert, which is just weird. And he did.
It's hard.
Oh, it's fucking hard. It's like a programming game similar to Robo Rally, but
Yeah.
with more chaos,
Ah.
and you will just die.
Well, it's attempting to do that, but cooperative, which
Yeah.
just isn't going to work.
Especially if somebody else does something that you're trying to do and ends up just messing the whole thing up. It's fun, but yeah, extremely frustrating, and you will end up shouting at your mates.
Probably lose.
He also did Through the Ages, which is a brilliant game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of the original sort of Civilization games.
Yeah.
I mean, it predates certainly the Sid Meier.
Well, no, actually, because there was a Sid Meier Civilization board game previous to the one that's Fantasy Flight did,
all right.
which had exactly the same title, Sid Meier Civilization, the board game. But it was shit.
All right.
So
Fair enough. Well, luckily, Through the Ages is really good.
Through the Ages is excellent, and it's kind of weird because that's a Civilization game that doesn't use a map.
Yeah, it's completely abstract.
Really abstract, but it works.
yeah.
And you do feel like you're building a civilization. So,
it's enjoyable to play.
have you played this, Pav?
Not really new.
No, it's good.
There's an online version of it as well.
There is an online version of it. They've actually just released, last year I think, they released a new version of it, which is basically the same game, but they've kind of updated some of the cards, they've balanced things a bit more. It's supposed to be a lot better.
Okay.
I've still got the original version, and that's good enough.
That's a good
like, definitely good enough.
Always enjoy playing it.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get back to Codename. So this is a party game. Now, I don't own this game. This is a game that was forced on me when I was quite drunk, I have to say, and dressed
This
as
is
a pirate.
starting to sound a little bit suspect.
I was dressed as a pirate,
Right.
obviously.
So is that the kind of parties you attend? That you get drunk and get board games forced upon you?
I think the
Yeah.
pluralisation of parties there was unnecessary.
I've been to one party in my life, Pavel.
This is the kind of party I attend.
Now, Codenames it's got a really sort of basic, simple premise. All right.
Yeah.
Basically, you're split into teams. So you've got a red team and a blue team, and one person on each team becomes, I don't know what the actual term for it is, but they're basically trying to tell the other players in the team what words they're looking at here, what words the other team have to guess, basically. The people on your team have to guess, sorry. So what happens is that it's a 5x5 grid, okay, which has got words on it. And they're quite sort of basic words. They're just stuff like, theatre and bottle or ambulance, that kind of thing. Just random words, really. And there's a lot of words in this game. The cards are all double-sided as well, so they've got different words on either side. And you just put a random assortment of those. Now, the two people that are the leaders of the team, they get to see the same card, which is it's a different card. It's got a picture of the grid on it, but it's got coloured bits on it. So if you're on the blue team, it's got, the first word in that grid that you've made, the 5x5 grid, is a blue word, and then there'll be another blue word, somewhere, another blue word, another blue word, another blue. So there's like 5 in one colour and 6 of the other.
Right.
I think it is. Possibly more. It might be 7. Might be 7 and 8. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Can't remember. But basically, the leader of the blue team is trying to get the people on the blue team to guess the words that are blue. Okay, so the people that are on your team can't see that card. It tells you what words they're going for.
Okay.
Okay. So, and how you do that is that you're allowed to say one word and one number. Okay. So, if you're trying to get them to guess 3 words, okay, you have to say the number would be 3.
Yeah.
And you have to say a word that's associated with the 3 words that you've picked. All right. So like I say, you can only pick one word, and and it's not. You can't pick a word that's on the table.
Yeah.
Okay, it has to be a completely different word. So, if for example you were trying to, I don't know, pick, if the 2 words you had were ambulance and bell. I'm just looking at a picture here actually on Board Game Geek that's got this set out. So if it's ambulance and bell, you might say siren.
Okay.
For 2. Okay. So they could look at that table and say, oh well, siren. What's associated with a siren? Oh, it could be ambulance and bell, because bell, that's ringing. Siren has a sort of similar sound, that kind of thing. And they have to then touch the words that they think you're talking about. All right. If they get it right, you can cover it up with your colour. If they get it wrong, it depends on what word they picked. So if they picked a word that belonged to the red team gets that. So you cover it up red.
Oh, so
right.
you helped them to victory.
You've basically helped
right,
them.
Okay.
If it's a word that neither team has, it just gets a neutral thing covering it up, because that word has now been picked and it's not anybody's.
Right.
Okay.
So you'll be narrowing it down as you go. Then.
Yeah, so you're narrowing it down, but it gets... So you have to try and pick a word that is only going to be associated with the words that you have, but not the words that the other team has. And that's one of the tricky parts of the game.
Right, okay.
Because, if I said siren, and there was something like, I don't know, harpy there, like siren, harpy, mythical creatures, you could go for that.
Somebody could go with that.
So you might say, oh, siren, oh, harpy, there we go. Oh no, I've just given that to the other team.
Right.
Alright, so you have to be careful. There's also another thing in the game, which never actually happened in the games that we played, but there's one word on the table, which is, I think it's either the spy or the assassin. I can't remember what it's called, the technical term for it. Like I say, I don't own this game, so... and if anybody picks that word, they've lost. They've lost the game. Alright? So you have to avoid that word.
And that'll be
at all
on
costs.
do you know? So how does that turn up on one of their cards?
It comes in the card that the leaders of the teams see.
Right. Okay.
All
So that will be set.
And so it's a set word that's on the table.
Right.
All right. So you have to try and get your team to avoid that word. Now, like I say, it's quite simple. It's quite a simple premise, but it's brilliant. It's really, really good. I can see why people were raving about this game. This came out last year, 2015. I can see why people were raving about this game because it's excellent. It's fun. And it really gets your brain going, and you have to it's one of those things where if you know how the other people think, you can get them in the right direction. Right. But if you're playing against somebody like happened with me, I was playing with two people that I just did not know. It didn't really work that well. I mean, we did quite well, but it could have been better, I think, if I was playing with like you two.
You may have sort of certain things
because it might be in jokes or something that we know, or that kind of thing that you
or
can
just
go
certain
for.
References you're both aware of that might they might sort of tie in.
Yeah,
that's quite interesting because I mean that's a similar thing that I said about Mysterium, where that game I feel could only get more interesting the more you play it with the same people.
Yeah,
because of the ways that you can start taking it away from that card's got that colour on it or something like that to something that's really abstract concepts that you're somehow able to communicate with each other because you think in a similar way, or you'll pick up on the same references and things like that.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting. Anyway,
oh yeah, I mean it's really good. I'm definitely tempted to pick up a copy of this because it's definitely an excellent party game, and it's easy to teach people how to play.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic rules and stuff, and it's a lot of fun.
I enjoyed it more than Mysterium.
Mysterium's a different kettle of fish, I think. I mean, Mysterium has got that similar feel to it, but Mysterium's much more trippy. Mysterium Mysterium feels much more like Cluedo to me. If you see what I mean. It's definitely got that same location weapon, but I mean, it definitely it's got much more of that murder mystery feel.
What it also sounds a wee bit like to me is there's a sort of daft sort of mental game you can play with just the two people. What am I thinking?
Yeah.
Where you both say a word, and then you count to you count to three. You both say a word, and between you, you're thinking, right, okay, how did that word link? And then you keep going, and you basically count to three, and until you both say the same word at the same time.
Yeah.
Now it sounds like that could go on forever, but I've seen people play this and get it within like three guesses. They're just like they both just coincide. But then you see people kind of circling around it and not quite getting there, and sort of getting the idea. So it could be a really frustrating game, this. I suppose the idea that it sort of narrows down as you go will make it at least you can just play a few rounds and really enjoy it.
And that's one of the things I liked about this is that the games were actually pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because you're not really guessing that many words. Let me count this. I've got this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think it's 8 and what was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What was it? 8 and 8?
8 and 8. I thought it would be the same.
No, because I think there were cards that had different numbers on them. I'm pretty sure. I might hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 9. Yeah. So it's 8 and 9.
Your 5x5 grid, you always sort of randomise that. Is that I didn't get. Are there multiple cards to choose? Like more words than just the 25? There's a whole set, right?
Yeah. So you're not just playing with the same words every time. Otherwise, the game would just become silly.
It would become guess who.
One team gets more words to guess than the other, but the team that gets more words to guess gets to go first.
Right.
So
okay,
that's how it works. It's 8 and 9. But yeah, excellent game. So that's Codenames, which is by Vlada Kvatnik. Fatil.
Khatil.
That's why to work properly, you need at least a decent number of players, yeah?
Well, you could play it
Four
before.
is minimum.
You could play it before. But, we played it with 6 and it worked really well.
Okay.
But yeah, I think if you play with teams 4 and 4, possibly, that would probably be the optimal number, I think, because then you've not got too many people shouting at each other.
Yeah. It's always a problem with these party games, especially when everybody's pissed.
I believe that people are supposed to shout at parties.
Well, that's kind of an accepted truism of parties.
It is. People are also supposed to drink at parties, Pawel. Do you know that?
So I've heard, yes. That's why I avoid them.
Right.
You'll always find them in the garden at parties.
Crying.
Oh.
Right, so that's by Czech Games Edition,
Czech Games Edition,
who do a lot of really good games.
Yeah. Presumably by more board game designers whose names we can mangle on our podcast.
Oh, definitely. Right, so let's move on then. We're going to talk about something that we've only played once, but is an actual classic game, which is Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yeah.
Now, this originally came out in 2004, so it's not the newest game. That's old for a board game, as we've discussed in quite a number of
fair enough.
occasions.
To me, it felt like something older than that, but maybe it was kind of. It did feel like it was harking back to some old computer games and stuff like that. I don't know, there was some element of that to me, like with the horror stuff.
Yeah, I can definitely see what you mean.
And the kind of weird cartoony horror murder sort of stuff in it.
Well, you tell us what the game's like, and I'll do some more research into that while you're speaking.
You find out a bit more about it. So, well, essentially, you play however many characters, however many people are playing. I think we played a 4-player game. I don't know what the maximum is with it. Does it go more higher than 4?
I think it does.
Right. Well, anyway, I mean, you choose from various characters. They're all set characters, and they do have attributes at the start of the game. They take the Lovecraft thing of having like physical points and mental points, but they're both split into 2. So you have speed and strength, or it's like constitution or something like that.
Something like that.
And then sanity and knowledge, or there's 2 of each basically. And when if the one of those tracks gets to 0, you're dead. So you enter this sort of haunted house, and the plot is you've all been sort of called there to investigate some mystery. But what's going to happen during the game at some point is that it's going to be revealed that one of you is a traitor and is there to basically to experiment and fuck with the other players. So you start off, you're exploring various rooms in the various levels of this house. There was different scenarios, I think, because there was a basement thing that we were aware of from the start. I can't really remember what that was, though.
The thing is, the thing about this game, I mean, having only played it once, but from what I can gather about it, is that the game starts the same every time. It's like the scenario part only comes into it once the traitor's revealed.
Yeah.
So there is a basement, and there's an entry level, and then there's the upper level. But the basement is like, you can't actually get into the basement until you find a way into the basement.
Yeah, and most of them involve just falling into the basement or something like that.
Falling through the floors.
I mean, my game in this pretty much consisted of me falling into the basement and then just no ever getting out again. And then falling into oblivion, I think. It's interesting the way, I mean, basically about halfway through the game, it just completely changes, and suddenly you've got this scenario where you're trying to escape from one of the players who you've been, up to this point, cooperating with.
Well, because the interesting thing about that is that the player doesn't know that they're a traitor, all right, until this point in the game. So there's certain things that happen. You have to do I don't know what the check is, but it's I don't know.
I've forgotten the name of that.
When certain things happen, you go into certain rooms and you draw cards when you're in these rooms, depending on what happens in that room. There's a little symbol that tells you what card you have to draw.
I'm going to say threat or something like that.
Yeah, and I can't remember the exact term for it, but there's a deck of cards where you draw one of those cards, and every time you draw one of those cards, there's only like 12 of them or something. You have to do a check. Yeah. Now, every time one of those cards gets drawn, that check gets harder.
Yeah.
And as soon as you fail that check, somebody becomes a traitor. And there's a lovely table in the rulebook that tells you exactly who becomes a traitor depending on what room you were in and who it is that you are, and it's all kind of weird.
And then, and then it gives you the scenario essentially based on that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And because what had happened was that I triggered the thing, but the table said the player to my left was the traitor, which meant that it was Ben.
Right.
And that meant that Ben then became the person that we then had to escape from. We've got a certain scenario that we had to look up in this scenario book, and then the whole game just changes.
Yeah.
So what had happened in our game was that Ben had opened up a
Portal to hell,
portal into hell,
yeah.
and the house started to become consumed by this portal. And
So-
Ben wanted to be consumed by this portal, so he was quite happy.
He was just
we had
running
to run
around.
the hell away from it.
Yeah.
So,
He was getting to choose as well what rooms were being... Because every turn he would basically just flip one of the room tiles so that it was essentially it had been sucked into this portal to hell. Which was at the point I got stuck in the basement where the only escape routes were turned promptly into portals to hell, and,
Yeah.
I was just faffing about in this derelict basement and waiting to die, essentially.
but yeah, it was a really fun game.
Yeah.
And the thing is that this scenario booklet has got quite a lot of scenarios, and I can't remember the exact number, but the game changes completely depending on what scenario you're playing. So it's not, you don't play the same game
Yeah.
every time. Like, you're not, it's like these scenario things are what make the game brilliant. Because, I mean, I had a quick flick through and there was another scenario, but it was basically like whoever became the traitor, you had to basically kill them or something, but there was only certain ways you could kill them, or, you know, and then, but there's so many different things, and they've been quite creative with it.
Yeah.
In the way that they've changed the game.
Aye.
So it's almost like
Well, they've drawn
you
on
start
certain...
playing a different game.
Yeah, they've drawn on various kind of like horror, the classic stories, but
Yeah.
then use that to sort of set up the game. But the way that they can affect it can be completely different from one to the next. I mean,
That sounds really cool.
it's a really fun game, and I was quite surprised how much I enjoyed it because
Oh, yeah.
I was a wee bit
I was a bit
concerned
skeptical
going in
into
because
it, yeah.
I was getting visions of like things like, I don't know, just the kind of sloggy kind of room like traipsing about. I can't remember what there was the Mansions of Madness one. I wasn't
Yeah.
too keen on that. It was okay, but it was kind of. But this one I thought was just really like it actually played really well.
Yeah.
All the the mechanics and everything really streamlined, just worked nicely, and it zipped along.
Oh, yeah.
And it was something like I thought that played probably better and more enjoyable. The other thing for some reason I kept thinking of was Space Cadets away missions.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different game, but it's got the same sort of daft B movie kind of themes and the same kind of
Yeah.
mechanics, roughly, where you're just moving about on a modular board or sort of scenario based
Yeah,
things.
exploring new bits.
But it can be a bit of a slog, whereas this was just a breeze from start to finish. Even though it was, it was tough, but it was fun to play.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, because obviously we've only played it once, but one of the things that the guys were playing with, because Ben owns this game, and he was basically saying that sometimes the game can become virtually impossible if you manage to fail that check that changes the game basically really early on. Because then you've only got a tiny house to deal with, and there's not very much you can do with that.
Because it just sets it at that point, and
Yeah.
you're not going to explore any new rooms.
Because I think we managed to succeed. You died, but
I died, yeah.
me and Gav managed to finish the mission because we basically had to like what was it? We had to do some prayers and stuff like that to get rid of this like thing. So we had to go to certain
Exorcise the
rooms.
place.
Yeah, we had to exorcise the place basically, and we had to go to certain rooms and stuff, and we managed to do it. But the fact is that we triggered that quite late on in the game, so we'd managed to explore quite a lot of the mansion, and that meant that we had a lot of time because Ben was only flipping over a certain number of tiles, which meant as long as we stayed away from that place, we had plenty of time to actually just do.
And as you're going through the mansion, the more you explore, the more sort of like you're getting items and you're getting power ups and stuff. Like, I mean, we were sort of increasing our stats at that point anyway, so it was kind of
I was the most sane little girl in the world.
We weren't bothered at
Everything
all.
that I found just boosted my sanity, and I was just like, I'm just not bothered.
That's actually weird, yeah, because did I not? You can like find people that sort of like go around with you as well, and I found a little girl, and she boosted my sanity for some reason.
But it was great. It's the little characters that are in this as well. The characters you play as are sort of classic B-movie tropes.
Sort of like a mad scientist sort of guy.
Mad scientist. The crazy looking little girl with the teddy bear with the missing eye and stuff like that, which is who I played as because I was like, I'm having that. And you've got the muscle man. The jock. But I mean, I really enjoyed the game. I was surprised by it.
Yeah.
I would like to play it again because I want to see
from.
different scenarios. Want to see how they play out.
Yeah.
Because they look like a hell of a lot of fun. Pawel, you need to come along to these gaming days that we have.
You mean parties? Gaming parties?
No, this wasn't at the party.
Like
this was just a gaming day. You keep playing RPGs, and I don't know why you do that.
Pawel's in demand in the RPG world.
I'll be looking forward to the next one.
Okay.
Unless I
Well, we shan't speak of that yet.
Which is every day.
No, it's just weekends.
Just days ending in Y.
Mostly.
Right, so...
No, I'd be keen to play that. It really sounds fun.
Yeah. It is. So that's Betrayal at House on the Hill, which is a strange name, but I'm not sure it makes grammatical sense.
It just isn't something anyone would really say, I think.
But that's by Avalon Hill and Wizards of the Coast.
We've really been going old school with Avalon Hill recently. We had Robo Rally the other week, and
interestingly, I did not know this, but one of the designers is Rob Davio, who's the guy that's been behind the Legacy games, Pandemic Legacy and Risk Legacy and all that.
Yeah.
He's the man behind all that. So yeah, Betrayal at House on the Hill. Good game. And it did come out in 2004. There was a second edition made in 2010.
Okay.
So
it almost somehow
it does feel much older.
It feels like a much older game, but it worked.
You know what I think it is? I think it's because it's an Avalon Hill game, and they did have that sort of archaic feel to their games. I mean, they did Robo Rally as well, which feels dated, but it's still a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Aye.
The sort of the hidden gems of Avalon Hill.
The Hidden Gem series by Avalon Hill. Hidden Gems. I hide them in my basement.
I keep all of the rubies in my basement from Avalon Hill. The shareholders, the bloody shareholders,
they're not getting at these.
They're not getting a bit of my Avalon Hill rubies.
I'll take them to my grave. That was our new comedy character, Mr. Avalon Hill.
Mr. Avalon.
Right, let's move swiftly on. We're going to talk about another party game, one that only I've played again, which I played again drunkenly, but I also played it before that. I managed to get my hands on a copy of a game called Deception: Murder in Hong Kong, which has been really difficult to get in the UK.
Yeah.
Like, it just seems that nobody seems to stock it. I had to get it imported from those cool guys at Cool Stuff Inc.
Cool Stuff Inc.
I think it was Cool Stuff.
Shout out to Cool Stuff Inc.
Now, this is a murder mystery thing. Bit more in that sort of Cluedo range. But like the way that I was describing it was that it was kind of like Werewolf, that classic werewolf game, crossed with Mysterium or something like that.
Alright.
Now, the idea of this game, just like in Werewolf, everybody's given a role. Okay? Now, if any of you played Werewolf, or you know how it works.
No, I mean, you've roughly sort of
you know roughly how it works. So in Werewolf, you one or two people's a werewolf, everybody else is a villager. You can make it more complicated by adding in different roles like village idiot and drunk and stuff like that. But it's the same idea. So basically there's bad people and good people, but nobody knows who each other is. So in Deception, it's similar. It's one person's a murderer, everybody else is an investigator. Now that's the basic version of the game. So
and there's the forensic person.
There's the forensic scientists, but they're basically just there to run the game. But they're on the side of the investigators. Okay. They know who the murderer is, but they're not allowed to speak. They're not allowed to do anything that signals who the murderer is, basically, other than using the tools that are given to them. So we'll get to that. So basically, in this game, you're given every player that's playing, so not the forensic scientists, because they're just doing something completely different. You're given 4 these red cards and 4 blue cards. Now, the blue cards are the murder weapon. Alright? The red cards are evidence at the scene. Now, there's a hell of a lot of cards in this game. I just want to give you an idea of some of this. So, like, some of the evidence can be stuff like sawdust or a puppet, stuffed toy, hair, toothpicks, violin, food ingredients, dentures, wig, vegetables, glue. Shitloads of different stuff. I mean, that's just like 10 cards or so that I've read there. That's only half the deck that I'm showing you there. Here's some more.
Bloody hell.
Oh, God.
So,
listeners, it's a large deck.
There's a large deck of evidence. There's even more there.
Jeez.
Right.
The blue ones, there's less of those. This is the entire blue deck you can see here. So there's maybe, I don't know, maybe about 60, 70 of those. 60 maybe. These are the murder weapons. So these are things like scissors, ice skates, bamboo tip, bite and tear, blender, arsenic, machete, smoke, whip, drown, trophy, metal chain, throat slit. This is how the person died. Okay? Everybody gets 4 each of those cards. So everybody's got 8 cards in front of them. We've got 4 murder weapons, 4 bits of evidence. Okay? Now, the forensic scientist has these card things in front of them, which I'm showing you guys, but you can't see in podcast land.
Lovely visual cue for
Yep.
for a podcast.
But these are just like cards. Each of these cards has got 6 things on them.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the forensic scientist always gets one that's the cause of death card, right? That's always the same in everything. Now, the causes of death can be suffocation, severe injury, loss of blood, illness or disease, poisoning, and accident. And they get to pick one of the location cards. Now, the locations can be stuff like a pub, bookstore, restaurant, hotel, hospital, building site, playground, classroom, dormitory, cafeteria, blah, blah, blah. Alright, so they get to pick one of those, and they also pick a cause of death. Now, they also get 4 random ones. Alright, so these can be things like what was the condition of the corpse, the victim's identity, the time of death, what was happening at the time, duration of the crime, that's always a fun one, the motive of the crime, sudden incident, weather, murderer's personality, all these kind of things. Now, they have those, the forensic scientist has those laid out in front of them, okay? So they've got to try and signal to the other players what happened during this murder. Because, just like in Werewolf, at the very start of the game, everybody goes to sleep. And then the forensic scientist says, murderer wake up, the murderer wakes up, and they point it to the cards that are in front of them. So one cause of death and one evidence. Okay? So the forensic scientist knows what the cause of death was and knows what the evidence left at the scene is. And they then have to use those cards that I was describing to you there, the ones with like the cause of death, the location, the evidence, that sort of thing, and put little bullets on them to signify to the investigators what happened here. So the investigators don't know who the murderer is, and they don't know what was used and what was left behind.
Okay.
Alright. Sounds kind of complicated. It's actually pretty simple once you get to play it, because...
It does sound complicated. Did you mention that you were playing it drunk?
Yes.
How did that go?
Well, we killed somebody, and then we just tried to figure out... Oh, no, sorry. That was a different night. It was fine. I mean, it was kind of like... It's hard to try and explain that game to somebody, especially when they haven't played stuff like Werewolf. But once you start to play it, you kind of see what's happening. So I played the forensic scientist because I know how the game works. So basically, I'm just there to help the investigators by putting these little bullets on the different words that I have on these cards in front of me. So let's just pick, for example, if the person used a chainsaw, so the murderer picked chainsaw as their murder weapon, and calendar as the evidence, I would then look at, say, the cause of death. I've got 6 choices here: suffocation, severe injury, loss of blood, illness or disease, poisoning or accident. I would probably pick severe injury for a chainsaw.
Severe injury. Or loss of blood, I suppose.
Loss of blood, yeah.
So
there's a couple of options there.
I would take a little bullet thing that I've got, and I would put that on that card on severe injury. Alright, now then I would get the next card, so the location of the crime. We'll say this one here: pub, bookstore, restaurant, hotel, hospital or building site. It's a chainsaw, we'll say building site. Alright, so I would put a thing on that. Now while I'm doing that, the people that are the investigators and also the murderer are sitting there pointing to each other's cards saying, alright, okay, if it was severe injury, it could be the chainsaw, it could be, I don't know, this metal chain or something like that. Right. So they're sitting trying to point to each other, accusing each other, like, it could be you, it could be you. You've got to also take the evidence into account. So if you're playing the forensic scientist, you might say, well, the calendar, well, maybe that was in, I don't know, a hotel. You could, instead of saying that it was in a building site, I could say it was in a hotel because there's a calendar there, maybe. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Bookstore.
Yeah, bookstore, maybe. I don't know.
At least they sell calendars there.
They do sell calendars. So you're sitting there doing that. So if you're, like I say, if you're the forensic scientist, you're trying to help the investigators. You know who the murderer is, but you're not allowed to say anything about that.
Right.
All right. And then basically what happens is you play 3 rounds. Everybody gets to make a speech at the end of every round. To say what they think happened and who did it.
So basically everybody gets to verbally accuse somebody else.
They do, but not officially. Okay? So they get to say what they think happened, basically. The murderer also gets to make their speech, so they can just be, I think it was him. He's got that thing, and at any point, everybody has a police badge. Okay? So that's the only other thing everybody gets is a little police badge that looks like a bar of chocolate, as you can see here.
That's lovely.
And at any point during the game, you can throw your police badge in and say, it was this person, they used that and that. Right. And the forensic scientist can only say yes or no. So if they get it wrong, so even if they picked, say, the chainsaw, if that was the murder weapon, but they got the evidence wrong, the forensic scientist says no.
Right.
So it could still be the chainsaw, there could be the evidence that they picked, they just don't know.
So what's the penalty for guessing wrong?
If you guess wrong, you're not allowed to accuse anymore.
Right.
Okay, so but you can still take part, you can still talk, you can still do all that sort of stuff.
So the murderer could potentially throw out an accusation at some point.
Yes, and that's what generally happens, is the murderer will throw out a random accusation,
Throw
everybody off.
Yeah.
Alright, and so that's quite fun.
Yeah.
There's extra things you can add into the game. They've also got a witness card and a... what's the word I'm looking for? Accomplice. So the accomplice, they know who the murderer is, and they know what happened. So at night, at the beginning of the game, when everybody closes their eyes, the accomplice wakes up at the same time as the murderer.
Yeah.
The murderer picks their things. Alright, so the accomplice knows what was used and where. The accomplice is on the side of the murderer. So they are working against the investigators. The accomplice wins if the murderer wins. Alright?
Alright, so there's two of them.
Yep.
You need plenty of players for that.
Oh yeah.
Set up one
It goes up to
detective
12.
against a murderer and accomplice.
Yeah. So, but you also get a witness. So you can throw the witness in there. The witness knows who the murderer and the accomplice is, but they don't know what they used. Alright? So they'll open their eyes after the murderer and the accomplice have done their bit. Alright, they'll open their eyes. The forensic scientist then points at the murderer and the accomplice. So the witness knows who the murderer and accomplice is. They don't know which is which, and they don't know what was used. Now,
the witness cannot say which ones.
Well, if the witness says they're the witness, but what's stopping the murderer saying that they're the witness? So the murderer can go, "I'm the witness. It was those two." And then the person that's actually the witness will be like, whoa, hang on, I'm the witness. No, it was and then who knows what to think.
Right. Yeah.
Now, so the witness wins with the investigators, the accomplice wins with the murderer. However, if you're playing with the witness, if at the end of the game the murderer has been found and they've been found out basically, if the murderer and the accomplice can tell who the witness is, because they don't know, right? If they can tell who the witness is, the murderer and the accomplice win because they kill the witness.
Right.
So it gets more interesting when you throw that stuff in.
Certain like circumstances and things, rather than like the werewolf thing, where essentially the werewolves every round are trying to actually kill off other players. You're
so
not
there's
really
none of
going
that.
for that.
You're not killing people off, so it's a bit more like friendly that way in terms of like there's no elimination or anything like that. Even if you throw your police badge in, you're still allowed to take part.
Just messing with each other's heads, basically.
Yeah, and it is basically it's a pure game of deception, which is what the game's called.
I've noticed the art style is Asian. You get Chinese symbols on the on the
everything is in.
Is there any part of the lore in the game that indicates that? Or
Well,
is it
it's deception. It's in Hong
full,
Kong.
The full title of the game is Deception: Murder in Hong Kong.
Okay.
Why it's called that, I have no idea. I'm assuming
the murder is supposed to have taken place in Hong Kong.
In fact, well, yes, but why? Let's have a look.
It's just a bilingual game that's also being released there, or something like this.
Yeah, I mean it is bilingual because everything is in English and I don't know
Chinese.
some form of
Just
Chinese.
pretend it's set in the Infernal Affairs universe.
Now,
Or the Young and Dangerous.
the designer is Toby Ho, so I'm
there
assuming
you
that
go.
that's
sounds like
probably
a
his
fancy
version,
book, yeah.
or someone in Hong Kong possibly. And it's by Grey Fox Games, and I really enjoy it. Like as a party game.
Yeah, but you need a decent number of players.
You need a decent number of players. You can play it with 4. I wouldn't. We played it with I think 6, and that worked. But if you've got 6, I wouldn't recommend throwing in the witness and the accomplice, because then you've only got a couple of actual investigators.
Yeah.
So it becomes a bit more awkward. So I was saying if you get above 6, maybe 7, 8, 9 people playing, throw in the witness and the accomplice because it does make it more interesting.
It seems like something that's designed for that, to kind of make bigger games.
More
give them a bit
interesting.
more something to do.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed it. Like I say, it was good fun. It sounds complicated. It's not. It's pretty basic, really. It's really just a game to make people accuse each other of stuff and fall out. So I like it.
That pretty much sounds like any party to me.
Man, you've been going to the wrong parties. Or the right ones, actually. Right. So, that was Deception: Murder in Hong Kong.
Alright, decent one as well.
Yep.
Is that the one? Do you actually own that one?
Yeah, that's mine.
Alright,
I had to get that imported.
we should give it a try at some point.
Oh yeah, totally. Right, we'll wrap up the board gaming section with a quick Time Stories update.
Yeah, we realised that we hadn't actually come back to talk about Time Stories.
Which is a shame because it's such an awesome game.
Yeah, it's difficult to say a lot about Time Stories on this, but I mean we have played through now. It was 2 of the scenarios since we last really talked about it. Well, one and a half really.
Yeah.
We were playing Prophecy of Dragons, and you basically reach a point in that where everything kind of changes and
everything goes weird.
You suddenly, because you're in this sort of strange temporal weird netherworld that this guy's created, but it starts to introduce like a bit of lore into the whole Time Story stuff, where you've got these beings that are sort of essentially working against the Bob and his robots and whatnot. Bob. So yeah, I mean that was quite interesting that it brought in that bit of story. So I think that there does seem to be things that are being weaved through all of these little modules for the game. But yeah, I mean, we basically it was a lot more combat based.
Yeah,
this one, because you had your fantasy realm, and that was like I was a magician, and somebody was a warrior.
I was a rogue,
a
dashing rogue,
and I was just constantly
some colourful slippers.
Yeah, no, I had some wonderful panties. I think
panties. Yeah.
I was just constantly using fireballs and spells and things like that, and just about dying. I was basically the glass cannon.
Oh yeah,
classic mage. Yeah.
I was an archer with full body armor, so nothing could touch me. If something could get close to me, but
I mean, it was interesting the way they worked all that stuff in with the armor and the items and stuff into the standard Time Stories decks and everything like that. Well, I mean, they always have their own style to them, but there is a sort of way to do things in Time Stories, I think. But they always seem to come up with new things to sort of make it interesting.
They have been quite creative with some of the stuff that they've done in this. I mean, we can't really say too much about the actual stories themselves.
On have a go at this,
because it's just too much spoiler,
yeah.
And because of the nature of the Time Stories, once you've played through a story, you can't play it again because you already know what happens, you already know how to solve the puzzles and all that, so it's kind of pointless.
But with each new module, it's just proving over and over that it's such a diverse idea and engine as such. You've got one box that's providing with whatever rules and mechanics, and then every single game is so different.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like the expansions just plug into the base game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really just how it feels. They just plug into it. Because the base game just gives you, a base level, really, where here are the rules of how to play Time Stories, and then you just plug something into it, and you go.
And they all modify it. They just take that and modify it to what it needs to be in that particular scenario.
I mean,
I remember the first game taught us that these scenarios will try to cheat us. They will try to lead us away, make us think that we know what we're doing, and we'll walk into it. Yeah,
you've wasted your time here.
Yeah,
exactly.
We wasted a lot of time.
So
on that
we've been rather careful with the recent modules. I think we've only had one time reset in the last adventure that we were doing.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is a good result. Because the first 2 games we had at least 2 resets per.
We've definitely been getting a lot better at recognising what is just a wild goose chase, and what is
Moon Boy. What is a potential Moon Boy?
Let's not. No spoilers.
Crap! Sorry. That's
I mean, the one I'm just trying to remember anything that really stands out particularly as well from Behind the Mask, which is a sort of Egyptian setting. That was the one we played at. We played that directly after finishing
Prophecy of
Dragons, and we rattled through that in an evening. We were just like, no, let's get this. Did we play that in one sitting?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
It was quite a quick one.
I really enjoyed that one.
But that one was really good, and it had some interesting bits. Like that had another maze set of cards, didn't it? I seem to remember. Well, it was kind of like a moving through various corridors, but that had,
cool.
Wasn't quite a maze thing. It's more of just a sort of making the right choices and sort of minimising your losses essentially as you move through this complex.
I think one of the most interesting things about Under the Mask was that you didn't have to stay the same character. Because it was basically it made me think of Quantum Leap or something like that. You were basically when you met
your characters.
You could meet certain NPCs in this, and this isn't really a spoiler for Under the Mask because this is more just about the mechanics of Under the Mask.
It's something they
and you're told that at the very beginning. And it's just there were certain NPCs that you could meet where you could just basically go, I'm going to become that person now.
Yeah.
And you had to do that to get through some of the game, basically. Well, there's obviously a lot of different ways of doing it.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think I changed. I maybe changed my character once.
I did as well, yeah.
But you're basically in that one, and it's again, this is all explained at the start of that scenario, is that you're given this little weird module. It looks like an insect thing or something like that, and it allows you to swap from one body to another, like it's a quantum leap style. Yeah, that was like that. That's something that wasn't in the previous things, but it looks like they might carry that on. They might not. It'll
but
depend
that's the beauty of this sort of time stories thing, because again, it's like, here's the base rules, but we're just going to chuck something in for this module only that'll change that rule. But you know, it's just it all works really well.
Yeah,
it's actually like it's really, really brilliantly designed. I have to say.
And we're currently awaiting the next.
Yeah, there's been some delays for that.
Module.
It's coming, apparently. It is coming, but
there's been some grumblings.
There's grumblings on Board Game Geek,
around it.
But you know what? Just shut up and be patient. It's coming.
It'll come. I mean, it's too good a thing not to make.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to sit and wait for it as long as I would rather that they did something well, and didn't rush it. Like,
yeah, I mean that's the one thing I haven't really. And I suppose the benefit from essentially being one playthrough things, but there's not been really any big flaws that we've really encountered. Anything that's gone, I don't, that needs to be changed or that. Maybe again, if you're going to do a second playthrough, you're going to have problems because you know how the thing works anyway. It's just not going to be the same experience.
Yeah.
So there's maybe a lot they can kind of get away there, but so far, yeah, it's been really well designed and thought out. The sort of storylines and the worlds that they've created.
Yep. Right, so that's Time Stories, which is by Space Cowboys and Asmodee.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously.
Yes.
And yeah, that's brilliant. And
still going. I
mean, for those of you that don't know what it is, it's basically choose your own adventure with your mates.
Yeah.
It's a choose your own adventure book with your friends.
It's a board game setting.
Yeah. And it's really, really good.
Yeah. Highly recommended for group gaming. Get a good crew together and get through these.
Get a regular crew together.
You need to be able to rely on people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and you can do things like we mentioned this before we were talking about this. You can save your game in this. If you have to stop for any reason, there's the box is designed nicely so you can keep everything together in the way it needs to be, so that when you take it all back out again, you'll have everything you need, and it should be easy to follow. And we did have to do that with the Prophecy of Dragons. I mean, we stopped at the sort of essentially halfway point of the game.
And that's a really clever thing.
Yeah.
Because you might not have the time to sit and play through the whole thing. Because some of these, I mean, I think was it the second one that we played, it took about 4 hours or something like that. It was a longer one.
And we had a good couple of time resets.
Yeah.
3 at least.
And it's good that they've added in that save system. And you don't have to just like panic about, oh no, I'm going to have to put this in one bag and that in another bag and then try and remember that goes there and blah blah blah. Yeah. You don't have to worry about that because the box does all that for you. It's good. Right, so let's have a quick break, and then when we come back, I'm sure me and Pawel are going to have a wonderful chat about Deus Ex and the video game section.
I'm looking forward to it.
my input will be limited, as I did try to fire it up, and then I kind of just never really. One of the things where you just start and go, I was going to play this.
Oh yeah. You went away, made a cup of tea, put a washing on.
Aye. Just walked out the house, never came back.
Right, so we'll be back very, very soon. We are back, and it's time for some video games.
Yay!
Pawel's favourite bit, other than the RPG section we don't do.
Semi-regular RPG section.
No, I do enjoy a good board game, I just don't play them often enough.
True, you don't.
Yeah. Hence your catchphrase, I can't believe you played this without me.
Honestly,
We're going to get that on a t-shirt.
Right, we're going to let Pawel give, because I've given my opinion on Deus Ex.
Which was awfully wrongful.
It was lukewarm, I think is the word. But I think we want to hear Pawel's opinions on this, because you love this series.
I do, yes, but then again, I'm quite excited about anything cyberpunk themed
True, you are. So, okay, let's hear it then. Deus Ex, Pavel.
Deus Ex is an awesome franchise to begin with, and this particular game is obviously brilliant. So, if you've listened to the previous episode where Chris was not stating himself clearly enough, what he actually meant is that Deus Ex Mankind Divided is a god's gift to all gamers, if there is such an entity. Anyway. Yes, actually, sorry, there is a religious sub-quest in the game. The machine gods.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually not...
I've encountered those people.
Yes.
I shot them.
They are of course you would, yes. So, as you may have mentioned during your review, you do get to play the game in a number of very different ways depending on your personality. Chris here is a bit of a homicidal maniac, so when he plays Deus Ex, he pretty much just mauls defenseless civilians and drags them around streets.
Not immediately.
And makes piles of them.
Not immediately. I like to have the good playthrough and then the psycho playthrough.
Alright.
I don't entirely agree with that. I think there's been quite a few games, and you've talked about on this podcast, where you haven't got past stage 1 because you've been...
I mean, what I mean by that is that I'll play through a game and I won't save any of the psycho stuff that I do. Just sometimes I get bored and I'll just go around just knocking people out for fun, but I always reload it.
Well, yeah. Like it's classic GTA style, you know.
But then I like, if I do finish a game like that and I'd start playing it again, I'll go for the psycho. I'll go full psycho
mode. Complete it. See what horrific ending you get.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that you've got to play with these things. You've got to find out.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure you've at least mentioned that the general premise and the theme of this particular outing of the franchise is just the cybernetic apartheid with a clear division between augmented or cybernetic half human half machine citizens and all the non-augmented masses that fear them, and you're obviously playing a heavily augmented special agent who in hands of Chris is definitely deserving all the hatred thrown at him. As a player, you get to play this game with no violence whatsoever, very stealthily, very gently, or you can just be a complete Chris. So,
is that a new term?
I think so.
You complete Chris.
It'd be the achievement when you the worst ending of Deus Ex.
I think Deus Ex is not trying to be Mass Effect when it comes to the amount of choices you get to make and consequences of them, not by a long shot. But it's nice to be presented with so many options for gameplay in a game that's essentially a series of missions. You get your hub areas where, if you choose so, you can explore, and you spend quite a lot of time on it. I can seriously say that because I'm a bit of a completionist and just in general enjoy these games. I've spent half my gameplay not doing any missions whatsoever, just climbing various townhouses and subway stations and finding various secret spots and getting a lot of stuff and experience points for it. But this game is telling a story from the beginning to the end. The fact that you get to play through something that linear and still decide what your gameplay should be like is, in my opinion, quite an achievement, and in fact an improvement on the previous game, which was supposed to be like this, but then you would just end up having to fight those heavily augmented bosses, and if you weren't really prepared for it because you were playing stealthily, then you were in trouble. And there were, I think that part was quite criticized in the previous outing, Human Revolution it was called, as well as the endings, which were very Mass Effect 3 like. So no matter what you've done during the game, at some point you're just presented with at the very end of the game you're just presented with a choice between 3 or 4 different variants, and that's that. So, if you're coming up with a sequel, or in this particular case, sequel to a sequel, then you're trying to improve upon mistakes you've done, and apart from that, you're just polishing the winning formula. Chris is making faces here, which was my intention. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, well, you're saying that you're basically, if you're making a sequel to a game, you're basically just trying to polish what you did before.
And repair your mistakes.
Yeah, repair your mistakes, but then all you're really doing is releasing a new version of that game.
Now,
which, for me, that's not a great model.
No, but if you think about it, you're telling a story. So the gameplay itself, make it better, fair enough, add things to it, but you're playing a game based on an actual story and characters to experience that through the gameplay.
Well, I think that's what you're doing.
Exactly.
I think it's something that maybe a lot of people have difficulty with when you're presented with a protagonist like Adam Jensen, who is dull as dishwater.
Yeah.
I was getting to that actually.
All right, so there may be some criticism of the game.
There's gonna be criticism. I've as much as I enjoy it, there's gonna be a criticism. But in general, I think the game is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I've just finished it. I think it was on Sunday actually. There's additional DLCs coming out. Some of them have been announced even before the game was announced. So, why not? Let's release a story DLC 1 month after the game's actual release, because this is the time.
That's what happens now, though.
Yep. But I can understand that if you buy a FIFA game or a Call of Duty game every year, and it's essentially the same thing with slightly changed gameplay mechanics here and there, then it's just going to be the same game. But if you're playing a game based on the same formula and the same mechanics, but telling you an entirely different story, then to me that's definitely enough of a justification to buy a game. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, no, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from.
No, but when you say understand, you don't really say you agree with me.
Well, no, because I mean, I think when you're buying something like Deus Ex, which is like a big title, right? It is a big title.
Well, it's almost AAA.
Yeah, I'd probably say it.
To be fair, if you're looking at the amount of devs working on it, it looks proper AAA.
I mean, and it's by a big company. It's Eidos, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, you brought up the sort of FIFA example there, but I think when people buy FIFA, they're buying it because they want to play football, all right? And if they get Call of Duty, they buy it because they want to shoot other people.
Well, yeah, but each of those games will do it exactly the same.
Yeah, they are. But I mean, when you buy something like Deus Ex, you want to see something different. You want to see something it's not just because I just felt like I was playing Human Revolution. Like, I felt like I was playing a PlayStation 3 game on PlayStation 4. It's basically like that was basically my criticism of it. Was just they haven't changed anything as such. The changes they have made, they're so tiny that they're pretty much negligible.
I'm going to say the biggest change, in my opinion, when it comes to gameplay, is the amount of routes you can take, the amount of ways you can achieve every single objective given to you. Whereas before, this wasn't really the case, and it's clear that this is what they focused on. There is not a single submission, not a single main mission that you have to complete in a certain way. There's always going to be a secret route that if you really wish to, you can discover without even seeing a single enemy.
But that was present in Human Revolution as well. I mean, I know what you're saying about like the bosses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the bosses and stuff like that. Yes, they were a problem if you did go that stealth route. Because I did do that. I did go the stealth route and then had ridiculous problems when I was up against Barrett.
Exactly.
Like that was a difficult fight for me. But I just feel like I don't know. It's not a bad game. Is the problem I have? It's like it's such a weird thing that's going on in my head with this game. It's just like it's not a bad game, but I don't feel that compelled to play it because I feel like I've already played it.
Which means that again, you weren't really that interested in the story.
No, the story is interesting, but I don't think the story is that.
It's not engaging.
It's not that engaging. Back. It's almost obvious.
See, I kind of want to. I now want to play this to settle the dispute.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to play because the one thing that's coming up with me that's from what I can tell would be the selling point of it is that you're enjoying. Well, if you're enjoying the story or whatever like that, is the multiple playthroughs and that with a lot of games, and that's something that I personally haven't done with games for so long.
Yeah.
Like I've played through some of the big. I mean, you've usually played it with somebody else who's got a console because I'm usually like minus a console or something, like that. And it's playing it through, so you maybe only do it once, but there's not that many that I've felt compelled. Oh, I'm going to come back and I'm going to see what different angles I can come at this from. And then you've maybe got games like you played Heavy Rain a few times, and that's maybe designed to be that way.
Yeah,
because you're like, well, what's the other?
But Heavy Rain felt like a story, and you knew what you were getting when you played Heavy Rain. Because Deus Ex is kind of like, it almost doesn't know what it is, because it's almost like, well, if this game is all about the story, why have you got all these action elements to it? Why have you got all these stealth elements to it? Well, because you're either playing a story or you're playing a game. I think the Deus Ex is trying to skirt the two things, and it's not working.
I'll be interested to see. I'll be interested for myself how that comes together.
I say it's not working. It does kind of work, because I say, it's not a bad game. I don't dislike it.
Uh-huh.
Like,
well, it's what
I've enjoyed
like the game
playing
that you
it,
enjoyed playing before.
But yeah, but it's and then we get back to that whole Adam Jensen thing. He is so boring. He's a terrible protagonist.
It really is.
Right, which brings me to my point, having completed the game, and I had a similar opinion really after Human Revolution. I fully agree. The protagonist is what most protagonists suffer from, which is, they're just your guides into the actual world, and you find that secondary characters or antagonists will be more interesting than the actual main guy. You see it in books, you see it in movies. It happens all the time. It's these games have very I'm gonna say, maybe not that complicated plots, but there's a lot of detective stuff in between all the political push-arounds and the plot lines. Whereas myself, my missus who plays the game, we usually find ourselves interested in the character arc as such rather than the plot line. Plot line, fair enough. You do play it, you expect a little bit of character arc. Yeah. It just doesn't happen.
But that's, I'm going back to Human Revolution, and I've played through that, and Adam Jensen does not have a character arc in that story. He does not have a character. He has becoming augmented at the start of it. Really, he is
never
there
asked
just
for it. There should be some.
The important plot lines in this, what is kind of made to be important is the stuff about the augmentation in a wider sense, how it affects society, and then obviously that culminates in the ending where it's like, how is that going to overall affect society? But then, Adam Jensen's just a bit player in that, and you don't care how it affects him.
If you watch the trailer, if you get hyped up for this game, you get hyped up because this is supposed to be an unjustly modified super soldier against his will, blah blah blah, tragic hero who's lost his love and stuff like this. Plenty of space for character development. You get nothing of that. At some point he meets his whatever ex. It's not even. Yeah. They talk about plotline. There's not even a little bit of the character arc touched upon. Yeah. I remember I was so disappointed that all the potential and Adam Jensen's story such was just not.
Nothing to do with him has any emotional impact.
And
yeah, and I find that difficult. I mean, I really do, because
there's plenty of games that do manage that. Yeah, that
But for a game that it does that almost Mass Effect thing where you're like, in Mass Effect you make your own person basically.
Oh god, yeah.
Alright, so you make your male shepherd or your female shepherd or whatever, and you can make them look whatever way you want. But their personality, they feel like a person, even though you've made them.
Absolutely, and you have your relationships, and
That's right.
I don't really mean romances. You're gonna have your relationships with a number of characters, and you feel that your shepherd is evolving, and you feel. You can see that the character actually has an emotional.
But it's like, but just Adam Jensen, because like I say, they've done that Mass Effect thing where you're walking about and you have like proper conversations with people, but Adam Jensen just has no opinion. Like, you basically give him an opinion depending on what's going on, but you don't feel like you're being steered towards anything. You don't feel like Adam Jensen himself might feel like he would lean towards this option or that option. You're just kind of just given that, and then I mean, Adam Jensen dresses all in black. All right, now he might as well just be a completely black silhouette, as far as I'm concerned, because he just has nothing. No, there's nothing going on.
I guess it's the problem with the sort of open-ended story thing.
Even if you get a character like this, because quite often protagonists will be like this, at least you get your colourful secondary characters to whom you relate in one way or another, and you can see at least secondary characters in some way or another changing through the game. They might die, they might go through some revelation, just about anything. Even those opportunities are missed in those games, unfortunately. You get to see that through the course of the game, the developers or whoever wrote the script for this game, you can see which characters are actually supposed to be important maybe to the protagonist, important to the gamer, and they just not utilized. They shown, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Adam's relationship with them, or his opinion on them, doesn't really change through the game. You think you know where this is going, and it never actually starts going there, which is my problem with the game. The relationship between Adam and Sarif, his boss, in the first game.
Sarif, it sounds like a used car salesman.
Sarif's ridiculous.
There was so much potential in there for his personal arc. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
I think there was a few sort of stuff and it maybe been a writing issue, might have been something as they were developing the game, but there definitely feel to be
there's a
few
focus on
botched
the
kind of
endings,
on
the politics and how to get where. But
I think they were doing too many different things.
Miss on so many things. So same thing in Mankind. You start the game, you get to know all your main sort of secondary characters. You start to either like him or dislike him, but in any way you can see what's Adam's relationship with them, and that just stays like this through the game. There's plenty of plot lines not really finished, even or not explained.
Probably DLC.
Might just be,
or just not.
It's just not bother.
I think the game made proper money, so there's probably going to be DLCs. There's already 2 of them out there.
The loose ends will be tied up.
Yeah. I don't think they will. They'll just keep adding additional missions where you have to complete your objectives, but it doesn't really change the story as such. Which is what I like in games. So this is the part that disappointed me slightly, because I've completed the game and I feel like there was this big premise about racism, about your cybernetic apartheid, it was really very modern as well.
Yeah.
If you think about all the refugee crisis nowadays,
yeah,
there were clear similarities, and somewhere halfway through the game that just disappears. All you do is you're trying to prevent a terrorist incident, and if you do, then you're successful. I've no idea where this game suddenly became just an anti-terrorist operation, and all the philosophy just disappeared.
The spoiler territory there. How does... I mean, you played it to the end, right?
Yeah.
So, you prevent this attack. How does that affect... Is there some kind of epilogue that's like, okay, that's how... Is it just like a drop in the ocean, something that is completely unrelated to what's... Or is there... Do they try and tie that in to the wider sort of... what's going on with the sort of apartheid and everything?
Well, yeah, there's usually in Deus Ex there's these Illuminati who control everything and blah blah blah. So if there is a terrorist attack, it's aimed to potentially change certain big scale. I'm gonna say politics on the planet, and probably the fate of augmented people. Let's say, yeah. So. Okay, fair enough. If you prevent this terrorist event from happening, that might just help the oppressed, augmented people on this particular day. Even to be fair, even Adam Jensen and his minion / ally comment that they may have prevented it, but that doesn't change anything.
It's not really going to affect
which is true.
Well, that is a nicely kind of like cyberpunk noir kind of ending, that sort of like we've done a bunch of stuff and nothing changed and our lives are shit.
I think maybe it would be, but it's not a noir game. That's the problem.
I thought that's what they were going for. I assumed that
nobody knows what they're going for,
because there's I would say there's a certain noir element, as much as there's a cyberpunk element.
Enjoy it if this was the note they were aiming at, but it was just accidental. I think they actually admitted it. Adam Jensen is supposed to be a double agent working for Interpol, but secretly also half spying on Interpol, and working for hacktivists. But his relationship with these hacktivists is never explained and never. It just serves the purpose of giving him missions. His relationship with Interpol and with his boss is maybe a tiny little bit explored through the game, but when I say explored, I mean literally 30 seconds of dialogue. And that's that. You've got allies who apparently are important to you. You don't know why, and the game ends, and they're still your allies, and you don't know why. I like stories in my games.
Yeah, I feel like we're talking you out of liking
I've
this.
got a feeling like you're chatting about this. No, that's good that you've kind of looked at. I should
probably mention that I mostly play Deus Ex because I get to hack stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fun part. The hacking thing is quite good, isn't it?
So each Deus Ex that I buy, I just, as soon as I have my Praxis kits, I just spend them all on hacking, buy all the hacking programs I can, and I just walk around looking for anything I can hack. I don't even need.
Did you find there was any like useful stuff in terms of when you're hacking? Because I remember that from Human Revolution, there'd be little documents and things like that would give you insight into characters and kind of like fill in gaps and stuff like that.
That's also actually probably a way to enjoy this game, which is why I've actually enjoyed it.
Take the time.
The main mission
like that
is probably not really that interesting if you think about it. But there's so many, not even there's side missions, and those are actually better, more compelling than the main mission. But the whole city of Prague and its 3 different stages is just filled with tiny little things you can find. Emails and personal whatever secretaries, which is what a PDA is called in this game, which you just keep finding anywhere. Ebooks, and those are actually really cool.
Well, if that's the thing, I think if they're well thought out. I mean, obviously I talked about Gone Home a couple of weeks back, and like the depth of character and like the engagement with the characters that you never even meet in a game, just through picking up bits of it and gleaning these little things. I mean, that's the sort of thing that was so well done in that. I don't know how you translate that into a bigger.
It doesn't work in Deus Ex though, and it feels like you're supposed to actually. Like, you hack into somebody's computer and you find an email and, it's got somebody's name on it, and then you go and hack into another computer. Like, you're supposed to remember that name and be like, oh, this is part of this email exchange. You don't get that in Deus Ex. There's too much of it is the problem, I think.
There's plenty of it, that's true. And if you play the way I play this game, you go through the entire city of Prague, which is many hours of gameplay, just hacking into everything, breaking into every single room. So you gather a lot of absolutely needless information. But this is where the actual fluff is. This is where all these emails that have absolutely nothing to do with the game, but are actually really cool. This is where you find them. But this is also where the weakness of the game is, because I went through the entire city of Prague, which is the hub area of the game, with some side missions, some main missions, but also quite a lot of just rooms you infiltrate for the sake of fun, for the sake of achievement, some XP, some whatever equipment. Now, in Human Revolution, you had your Detroit, which you would go through. Then, after a certain event, there would be another another unveiling of Detroit, but at night time and during riots. So Detroit would slightly change, and you would play in it again in the same hub area, and then you would go to the multi-level city of Hengsha, which was an entirely different hub area. In Mankind, you only have Prague, So you've got your prologue mission, then you've got Prague, then you've got mission, as in a main proper big size mission, and then you've got Prague, slightly changed. Things would have reset. Some of the things would have reset. Some of the computers you broke into, you have to hack into again. Most of them are already done. Most of the drawers you've opened are opened. Some of them are not. So for a completionist, this is actually quite frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you've been through the entire city.
Yeah.
I mean,
You can't go through the entire city again because most of it is already explored and looted. But you also find in some lockers, but maybe one locker and 15, you'll find things that have been added there.
oh, that's going to drive me mental. 'Cause I've not really played through all of it.
Me when I came back to Prague. So I've not been. I've just sped up that. And you know what? You've got another mission, and you come back to Prague the third time, and again, Prague gets reset to the point. And this is actually a weakness of the game. You know how you walk into a place that's got some significance in the game. You got a receptionist that meets you for the first time and greets you in this bank.
Yeah.
And your Adam Jensen will make a comment about this bank. He's never been to this data bank before. You've talked to the receptionist, blah blah blah. You've explored all your conversation options, and your first outing in Prague. You're gonna have, if you want to speak to this receptionist when you come back to Prague later on, say a day later, during your second outing in the game, it's exactly the same conversation.
Yeah.
And then third time, exactly the same conversation. They've not changed it. I don't know why. I was quite disappointed by that.
That's going to drive me mental because I've been playing through I've played through a bit of it. I've not completed it like you have. In fact, I don't think I'm anywhere near that stage. But I have been like you, just like stealthing into places, hacking into everybody's computers, stealing everything out of every locker.
That's what you do.
Doing all that stuff. 'Cause that's what you do in these games, aye.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just going to drive me mental.
So at some point, you just switch off that tendency.
Yeah, you have to switch that off.
Yeah,
aye.
yeah,
And I know I'm getting better at doing that because I used to be a real completionist with these kind of games.
Oh,
and I'm getting better at just turning that off now.
To be perfectly honest, I enjoy this way of exploring video games, especially.
You do have to turn that off in order to
with
enjoy
hubs. So if you're playing Mass Effect and you get to Citadel, you just spend the next 3 hours exploring Citadel.
Yeah.
But in Deus Ex, at some point you realize that you just have to switch it off because otherwise it's pointless.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I told the story actually the last time we talked about Deus Ex, but just to do with just some of the AI of the NPCs, in particular the police. All right, because they're idiots. I was wandering about in Prague, and then I was looking for places I can break into, basically, just to go and do something. And I saw a vent high up somewhere, and I was just like, oh, I wonder if I can get into that vent. So I wandered into the train station, and I picked up a vending machine. So just picture this, right? Somebody comes out of a train station carrying a vending machine, right? A policeman standing looking at you. You then proceed to throw that vending machine on top of their police van, right?
I know which station you're talking about.
And they're just looking at you. And then you climb up on top of their police van, climb on top of the vending machine, and jump up through a vent. The police do nothing about that.
That's a bit.
But if they're looking at you when you're trying to hack into something, they start shooting.
Oh yeah. You walk up to somebody's computer and they go fucking nuts. You can throw vending machines on their vans.
This is well, if it's changed the nature of property rights.
Right, anyway, let's wrap that up. That's been quite a long discussion about Deus Ex.
Well,
there,
conclusion
but,
to it.
Rant, sorry.
Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, utter dog turd of a game. None of us enjoyed it. I haven't even bothered to play it.
I enjoy it quite a lot. It's just got its flaws, unfortunately.
It has quite a lot of flaws.
But
again, I do enjoy the game, but there's nothing drawing me to play it. So that's my conclusion. Pavel, you love it because you're obsessive in that way.
Yes, I am.
Excellent, right, so that's our conclusions about Deus Ex here. So that's by Eidos Montreal and Square Enix. And there's probably lots of DLC coming for it.
Well, the first one was when we pre-ordered, because that's what happens nowadays, and the second one got released pretty much 3 days ago. So.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to something different, something we haven't talked about before. I'm pretty sure I haven't talked about this. I have played it a few times now, but so this is, now I've already forgotten how to pronounce it, Jalopy? Jalopy.
Ah.
Jalopy.
Jalopy.
Right, so I had to look up this term. This is a game that I picked up on Steam, right? I had to look up this term, and jalopy apparently it's an archaic American term for a decrepit car. Now, I looked this up on Wikipedia, obviously, because that's what you do these days.
That's where you get information from.
I've also found out some other names for decrepit cars, which include hoop tie, shed, clunker, lemon, banger. That's what we would call. We would call it an old banger, maybe.
Aye.
All right.
Lemon, that's another sort of really American kind of way.
It's a lemon.
You sold me a lemon.
And we've got rust bucket. We've got death trap, disaster on wheels, rattle trap, but my personal favourite, shitbox, which is just, that's a brilliant term. So this is jalopy. This is by Minsk Works and Excalibur Games. I don't think they've done anything else. I think this is their first venture into games. Now, this is a very early access game. Okay, so I'm talking about this very early access. So I'm just going to give that as a disclaimer.
Okay.
Now, this game is basically a driving simulator. All right. Now, it's set in Eastern Europe. So I think you're kind of supposed to be in Eastern Germany is where you start in 1990. Okay, and you've got this really shit car, which is called a Leica. And I think it's supposed to be a ladder.
What they are.
But it's a Leica. And you start off with just, you can lift up the bonnet and you can look underneath it, and you've got your engine, you've got whatever else, you've got your battery and your spark plugs and all that sort of thing. You can pull all this stuff out, you can replace it with other stuff, but basically you've also got boot space in your car, so you can you start off in a garage at your house basically, and there's spare bits, so you can grab a couple of wheels and the wheel jack and another engine or something, another battery, some bottles of water and oil and all that kind of thing, and you can just throw it all into the boot, but there's only limited space, so you've got to be careful with what you take. And then you just set off driving. Now, if you play the tutorial mode, you take your uncle with you. So it's just this guy's got a weird tweed jacket with it's got a static texture on it. So when you move, the tweed thing kind of stays there,
right.
but
and
it just it messes with my mind.
It looks like a portal out of the world. But, that's horrendous.
Now, so he sits in the driver's seat and he tells you what you're doing basically. So you drive from Germany down to the Czech Republic is the first thing that you do, but you have to stop before the border and get into a motel. But you're just driving along these roads. It's got this weird graphical style. It's kind of almost cartoony.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange, but it's really sort of almost polygony, but cartoony at the same time. It's really difficult to describe it. So you're just driving along in this shitbox, and you'll just drive, and the road there's only really one road that just takes you there. You might come to a roundabout, and eventually you'll get to a town, and then you stop there for the night, sleep in the motel, and you've got money. So it costs 20 whatever monies that they use in this game, but possibly euros. They might have just called it, but
in 1990s.
I know, but I don't know. I don't think they do call it that. I don't even think it has a name for the money. So you'll stop there and you'll sleep there. You'll wake up the next morning. You'll cross the border at the checkpoint. You've got to show your guards. Quite a nice little touch is that when you go up to the border, the guard says "papers, please," which is a nice little nod to another excellent game. And then you'll keep going. Okay, now you have to pick your route as well. So you can pick a longer route deliberately that might have a petrol station on it. Generally, the longer routes are the ones with the petrol stations because you have to refuel your car. You've also got to keep it topped up with oil. So when you fuel up, the oil mix goes out of balance. You've got to put more oil in and blah blah blah. If it's raining or you get mud on the windscreen, you've got to make sure there's water in the water thing in the car. So you've got to carry water around with you. But you can't take everything. Is the problem. Your wheels get worn down really quickly, and you can only got space for 2 wheels, so you get these issues.
Right.
So what actually happens in this game is that when you're driving along, you might find at the side of the road there's an abandoned car, or there's a box or something. You might just spot it, and you'll just stop in the middle of the motorway and get out. And you pick it up, and this box might have sausages in it, or champagne, or pills, or that kind of thing. You can grab all this stuff and throw it in your boot if you've got the space for it, and take it to a town or a petrol station. You can sell it.
Right.
All right. And that's how you make money in this game. So if you find an abandoned car, you can take the parts out of it. Oh, that's a better engine than the one I've got, so I'll stick that in there.
Your car better as you go.
I sell this engine that I've got. So you can make your car better, it becomes more fuel efficient, or you can get a bigger petrol tank, or the spark plugs will make the car start faster and uses less fuel or battery or whatever to start it. So you can just be constantly improving your car. In the towns, there's garages basically, so you can go and buy new stuff if you've made enough money. But it's just it's a weird game because most of the game you are just driving in a straight line.
That's what I'm like the idea that you are travelling you are physically playing through that, and it's odd. It's
weird because I mean there are driving simulators out there that are quite popular. I mean you have actually got like Truck Simulator and stuff, which is a really weirdly popular game.
All these
and then
games.
This game just takes it that wee bit more cartoony and wee bit more sort of like you've actually got to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like in terms of because it took me a few playthroughs before I'd actually started making money and not destroying my car. Basically, there was a couple of occasions the car has weight. So if you've got loads of stuff in the back, right? I've had loads of stuff in the back, taken it to a petrol station, sold it, come out of the petrol station, went around the corner and the car flipped because there was no weight in it anymore. Because I'd sold everything.
And
I was just like,
oh.
And at any point you can go back home and it just instantly teleports your car and you back home. Everything that was in the car, including all the new stuff that you had, comes with you. But you've got to then start again in Germany and go back through the Czech Republic and into Hungary and all this. It's weirdly fun.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, I think the daft theme and the obvious kind of like the bit silliness about it, but I say, and anything with a good upgrading system, you will play through just about any daft thing to get to that. I don't know, like, there's a lot of people who will just be drawn to just like a good upgrading system.
And
it's fun.
it has a decent upgrading system. Like I say, it's very early access. I don't know how far they're going to take it, but the stuff that you can upgrade it with now, there's quite a decent amount of stuff there.
See, I'm quite surprised because I mean I've seen you playing a bit of it, and I've heard of this been knocking about for a while, is it not?
It came out. I think the early release
kicking about for a while,
22nd of April this year.
All right, okay.
So it's been about 6 months.
I thought, but even so, I mean, it's like it seems like a fairly completely realised game. I mean, especially when you're saying they know what they're going with it and everything.
I think they've only got as far as making. I think Hungary is as far as you can go.
Right.
But I think they're going to add more countries in and stuff. And the scenery changes depending on where you're going through and stuff. One of the interesting things is that every time I've played it, when I've come out of the, I think when I've come out of, or I'm going towards the Czech Republic possibly, you end up going around a dirt road. Alright, so if it's been raining, you just get mud all over your windscreen and stuff. Your car gets manky. You can, at the petrol station, there's a lovely little bucket and sponge at every petrol station. You can just stand and clean your car.
Oh, yes. Is it first person, that?
Oh, yeah, it's first person.
Oh, that's good.
But, like, you go down this dirt road, and then I think just about every time I've played it, I've come to a bridge that's been out, so you can't go any further. But you can turn around and then go along. You cross a railway line at one point. You can just drive along the railway line and join back onto another road.
As you would in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. And it was quite fun, that, because at first I thought, is this as much of the game that they put in? Is this the bridge, the end of it? And it was just like, well, no, I'm just going to drive along this railway line. Oh, here we go. There's a road and there's a town. Brilliant. I'll sleep here for the night. But it's like I say, it's strangely addictive.
Yeah.
You want to get the best bits for your car. That's just what I'm doing. Basically, is finding boxes of champagne at the side of the road. Some of them are locked. You need to buy a crowbar. Basically,
can you just take the box?
You can take the box with you,
but you can't get into it.
But you can't get into it, so you can
sell the box.
You can go and buy a crowbar and just jimmy it open. But again, taking the crowbar with you takes up space in your boot. So you've got to think about what you're taking.
That's it.
And by the way, tyres are expensive, so
tyres are.
It's like take 2 tyres with you, but your tyres are going to get ruined, so you can't really drive with broken tyres. I know that from experience.
I got a £30 set of tyres at my last after my last MOT, and I'm now having to pump them up with air just about every other day, so I can keep driving.
That's it, man. You get what you pay for.
Exactly.
So that's jalopy.
Jalopy.
I'm
going to say that, jalopy.
Jalopy. Shitbox, as we're going to call it from now on. A pretty good game, and I'm really interested to see how far they take this.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're only on version 0.5 at the moment, so I don't think they're that close to full release yet. But again, that's an early access game, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's amazing the variance of quality on Steam early access.
Oh yeah.
But you can generally tell with something like this that has a bit of thought, obviously, put into it. There's an idea there, rather than somebody who's just gone and bought some just some already created assets and stuck them all together in some crappy first-person shooter or something like that. You know, you can tell that it sounds like it's sort of something worthwhile.
Yeah, there's some love going into this game. I think, and I think you can see that.
Well, have you been to Germany?
I haven't been to Germany. No,
they actually have whole museums for jalopies, I should say.
Oh right.
There's I've seen two in Berlin. Plenty of love for old cars from that particular area.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where Minsk works are from, but with a name like that, it sounds.
Well, it's kind of based on you know, just road trips that people do around Europe and just terrible old cars and stuff like that. Maybe we should enter a first player token team in the Gumball Rally. Come on, the three of us will drive to Russia.
I would be well up for that.
In some probably in my shitty car.
They would probably accept it.
See if it survives.
Shittest car competition. Right. We'll move on. What will we move on to now? Right, Pavel, you've been playing Alpha.
For Honor.
For Honor. Beta. Okay, tell us about that then.
For Honor. You don't really earn honor in this game. Right. The game is coming out in February. So at the moment, this was I think the first closed beta or whatever.
Yep.
Actually, it may have been called Alpha or something like this.
I think it was Alpha.
Yes, it was a closed one though. But I got me a ticket. Really enjoyed it. But you know, it's going to be a PvP game. That's really all these games. I mean, if you play Overwatch nowadays, if you play just about any MOBA, that's always just player versus player, which is essentially what For Honor is going to be. Now, it's going to have a single-player campaign. We'll see how that turns out. And you can play versus bots as well, which is what I do like, which is what Star Wars Battlefront didn't have until recently, and it does have now, although it's still fairly rubbish. Right, so For Honor is essentially a third-person non-shooter, because instead of whatever firearm, you're running around with a medieval Zweihänder or various other types of melee weapons. Quite a lot of focus in the game is given to the actual, I'm going to say, I don't know, swordmanship itself. And it seems to be working pretty good. It feels fairly complex at first, but it comes to you naturally once you start playing it. And I think it does have a quite a lot of potential. They came up with its own name for this particular mechanic, the Art of War. I think they're calling it. But
the Art of Battle. The
Art of Battle. Thank you very much. But essentially, this is just your PS4 controller sort of changing its button scheme if you lock onto your opponent, and then you're using one stick to move around and the other stick just to change your stance.
Right. And
depending which stance you are, you're parrying blows coming from that particular side, and you're attacking in that particular direction as well. But this is the basics on it, and the actual Art of Battle is much more complicated, but quite fun. I think quite a bit of fun comes from differences between characters you play, I should say classes that you play. There's 3 factions in this game, which I think a good half year ago or a year ago they were supposed to be called some sort of chosen and
some generic names.
Other. Well, actually, they are generic names now because they figured let's not try and muddle it up, and now the factions are just called Knights, Vikings, and Samurai because this is what they are. Although obviously they are fantasy versions of those 3. I'm gonna say aesthetic concepts. There is some lore behind this game. Apparently, there's been wars waged for thousands of years, and there's some sort of big villain behind us all just manipulating all these peoples to constantly fight. But I don't know much about it just yet because the closed alpha was all about learning how to fight in this game. The tutorials were really well made, to the point that for every class there were several different instruction videos, which I found quite informative. Which is important. Games like this can have a fairly steep learning curve, and this is, especially in PvP games, this is usually what scares me away, because if you play in a competitive multiplayer, there's always a bunch of people that have played 20 times as much as yourself and are just enjoying killing everybody that just joined. But in this game, you can easily just educate yourself by, fighting AI, which seemed a little bit predictable as a good thing. But this was closed alpha, and even in closed alpha, if I was teaming up with other players versus bots, I could see deaths all around me. So it must be that AI was still good enough to actually beat somebody. Not me, because I'm awesome. Plenty of diversity and classes, which is gonna help. And they've only showed up. There's gonna be, I think, in the finished game, there's gonna be 4 different classes per faction, so 12 different characters to play as in the finished game, and they differ quite a lot, because if you're playing as a knight, you either are a well-rounded armored knight armed with this huge sword, or you actually play defensively with a shield and a flail.
She's a Zweihander.
Yes, things like this. And the part that I found really satisfying was just like sound effects and the actual feel of those are heavy characters. This is heavy armor. Those are heavy weapons, and you can feel those blows. That was animated well in most places. So I'm looking forward to the remaining characters to be unveiled, and then there are some comparisons, I suppose, that you can come up with when you're thinking about For Honor, because there's arena shooters are becoming more popular nowadays, with teams fighting each other, and arena shooters will usually have a bunch of very colorful characters, and obviously Overwatch as a prime example of this. For Honor's only going to have 12 characters as such, and I suppose with it comes decreased variety of what you can do with those characters, because none of them is running around with a crossbow. Yeah, it's still a melee game. Yeah. So I'm not sure how the final game is going to look like as far as modes are concerned, because there's going to be, obviously, capture a flag. There's going to be some sort of deathmatch modes and things like this. But my biggest question mark is the single player campaign. The game was never, at the beginning the game was not supposed to have it. Then they've announced that it is going to have it, but we've not really heard much about it since.
I mean, it looks like it was totally set up to be a multiplayer game.
It has every markings of it. You complete your games to unlock whatever gold coins to buy upgrades with. You find loot on the battlefield, which allows you to upgrade your weapons, whether it's a new handle for your flail or a new shield. You X up your character high enough, and you get additional patterns and symbols on your helmet or your left shoulder and things like this. It is going to be a multiplayer game. A single player campaign is, I don't know. I'm glad they're adding it, but I'm also a little bit surprised.
Fair enough.
It was for an early alpha. Everything really worked well. Matchmaking worked fine. Can't say about balancing, because once I found out that I can actually flail people in the head, I just I just played this one character, and it really was just cool.
It does sound like fun.
Absolutely, it's the defensive flail armed knight is an easy character to play, which probably added to my experience, because some of those characters are probably a little bit more demanding for a skill. Again, like in arena shooters, you're going to have characters fairly easy to pick up, and you're going to have characters which can be very powerful, but only if you know how to use them. And in this game, pacing matters, range matters, tactics are quite important. Now, A friend of mine who played it insisted that people will just button mash through this game. I don't think that's possible given how the art of battle was designed. But we'll see.
Cool. So you enjoyed it then?
I'm looking forward to the next one if I get an invite again. But I quite enjoyed it. I normally, if I do play betas, I don't tend to spend a lot of time with them simply because your progress is gonna get wiped anyway. I was more curious about this game than I thought I would be, and I enjoyed it far more than I expected it. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Cool. Right. So that's For Honor, which is by Ubisoft Montreal. And the full release is, it's scheduled for February the 14th, 2017.
Yeah,
excellent, right, so let's wrap up with a quick chat about everybody's favourite Tetris-style game, which we talked about in the last episode, but you finally had a chance to actually play it.
I really enjoyed it.
So this is Tricky Towers.
Yeah.
How do you finding this, Euan?
Yeah, no, I wanted to play a session with you and your girlfriend there, and we sat and just enjoyed all the various modes and the because I'm always a bit I said as we were playing it, I'm slightly trepidatious when it comes to anything with a sort of classic puzzle mechanic in it, because you just assume that it's just going to be a reskinned classic puzzle game.
What, you mean like Tetris?
Like just a reskinned Tetris or something like that, and like what they've done with this is amazing, and all the different sort of challenge modes and things were really interesting. I love the one where you had to actually because most of the basic game is you're placing these blocks down and sort of trying to get usually like above a certain height, and then holding
and it's
that
first
sort of
person
height.
to get there.
Yeah, and then holding that for before it all just collapses on you.
Yeah.
There was a really fun one where the bar was really low. You couldn't actually go above that bar, and you had to see how many blocks you could get in, and you had basically a single little sort of stick of land. Essentially, that you had to try and fit things around, so you were trying to like get things in really tight so you could have parts that were hanging off that you could maybe hang other pieces off and things like that, because it was whoever had the most pieces that were still in play once somebody's hit that, once you'd all hit that last
once you hit the line.
So I really enjoyed it.
So is that a split screen thing, or
no?
It's not split screen. You just everybody plays on the same screen. You can play it online as well against other people. I mean, it's Tetris with physics. It's got gravity, and but
it's so much more.
It's so frustrating, but amazing. Like, it's so addictive. Because my girlfriend, she's not really a gamer, but she likes Tetris. Yeah. And when I introduced her to this, she was just like, "Oh no, oh no, I'm going to get addicted to this."
And I think it's the sort of game that if you're actually good at Tetris, you'd be good at this game, because if you're good at getting all the bits together and you have an idea for how that works.
But you do also have to move away from Tetris in order to be good at this game, because you can't just play this like Tetris. If you do, you've lost.
Well, there's certain things you want to stray away from.
Yeah.
You want to interlink things as much as possible.
Oh yeah, totally.
I had a lot of things where I was like, look, I'm just going to slap that down because at least it fits. And then you get a wee bit up, and suddenly, because there's a long gap or there's a long seam in between different things, it just falls apart.
It just collapses. Yeah. And it's quite fun when you're just sitting there, you've built this tower up and it starts to wobble. And you're like, oh no, what have I done here?
And then you start just doing really, you get sick of it. I'm just going to start doing the audacious stuff, just chuck loads of things down, and it's like, oh, this is actually working for a bit. Sometimes you can get away with really sketchy stuff.
Yeah. There is also single player mode in it, but did you ever go at that? I don't think you did you?
I might sit and play it.
The single player mode, it's almost like a series of puzzles, basically, but it's the race mode, you're timed to get up to this certain thing rather than playing against other people.
I also enjoyed the classic Mario style sort of aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
It's basically the wee cloud men, but you're meant to be wizards, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think wizards and witches,
Yeah.
But it's
the sound,
such
the look,
a fun game.
all that stuff was just your sort of classic platformer game looked at.
I mean, there's a lot of good couch co-op games been coming out recently, like the past couple of years or so. This is definitely up there with them, for me anyway. Way Overcooked and that kind of thing.
Quality game.
Absolutely brilliant. Pawel, you should give it a go.
Yeah, well, it may not have story in it, but from time to time I play stuff like that.
You can enjoy this kind of game. I would say this has probably got more replay value than Overcooked. It's more... Well, not more replay, but it's more addictive. Like you will just keep on hammering at it. Whereas Overcooked, you reach a point going, I can't make any more fucking soup.
But Overcooked is kind of preset as well with its levels, whereas Tricky Towers is just like it's the same thing, but random tiles come in and you never really play the same thing twice.
Yeah.
So it's so good.
Big recommendation from me.
Just try it,
Yeah. Okay, so that's episode 28.
Bloody hell.
With that's a long one. That's a long one.
Well, we're in the second season. It's time to start upping the numbers.
But we're making up for not doing an episode last week.
Chris apologises for that.
I do apologise.
Have we unphase shifted? I think we have.
We have unphase shifted.
That's good.
So if that's only if we don't do one next week, which I'm going to recommend we do.
So we'll just be going straight. We'll be popping our heads into reality briefly, and coming back out again.
What was that term that they used in Stranger Things?
Upside down.
We're in the upside down at the moment.
Upside down, yes.
Yeah. Also, if you haven't seen Stranger Things, fucking watch it.
That's good today.
So episode 28. That's that one done. So let's do the internets, because I've got some internets here. If you want to email us, that's firstplayertoken@gmail.com. That's FIRST. Facebook, we are on there. You can find us on Twitter as well, but that's at 1STPlayerToken.
Once player.
Thank you, Euan. We're on SoundCloud. You can find us on iTunes, and please review us on iTunes. We've already got a glowing review on there.
Very, very pleased with that. But keep them coming. If any quality of review, really, just more, just content, really.
Indeed.
We're on the internet. We're looking for content.
You want some content because we're content creators.
Well, yes, it's all about content these days.
The term that I despise.
We're
on YouTube.
Trying to get a burp out about that, but I couldn't.
We're on YouTube.
So sick.
You can find us there, First Player Token again. My Twitch username is Unnecessary Chris. I almost forgot it there. I actually streamed Jalopy just a couple of weeks ago. I'm hoping to do some more of that because that was fun.
Yeah.
And we are part of the Podnose network, and that's podnose.com. And there's a whole array of
big
podcasts
old
on there.
Of UK entertainment podcasts.
Yes. All UK based
all
stuff.
All sorts of various things, so worth checking out.
I think we might be the only Scottish one.
I think we may be. No, there are other Scottish hosts. I'm aware of
Other
that.
Scottish podcasts are available.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for listening. We will see you in episode 29.